Thanks for tuning in to the ABC Music Talk podcast, the show for anyone interested in the music industry. It's February 2022 and globally we are finally starting to see the light at the end of the COVID-shaped tunnel. Despite any positive signs of decline in infections, hospitalizations and deaths, its effect will be with us for a long time to come. My guest in this episode will tell us their story about coping with COVID from the indie label perspective. But first, time for me to remind you all to go road to your videos. Rota is for artists, managers, labels, or anyone in the music industry who needs to create video content for promotion or monetization. Rota makes it fast, easy, and inexpensive to do all of that in one place. Head to www.abcmusic.co and click the Rota logo on the homepage to access a 10% off discount for the service. Welcome to the show, co-founder and managing director of Hospital Records, Chris Goss.
Thanks very much.
How are you doing today?
I'm good, yeah. Nice early start.
Yeah?
Good to be down by the canal.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, no, it's not raining in London, which is always a bonus this time of year. So I realise I've just sold Hospital a little short there, because you're a bit more than just an indie label, as we'll learn. And I'd also, like listeners, so this is a COVID thing. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things that have changed in our collective lives. And I just want to make a statement, which I thought about it as I wrote it, and I thought that is utterly mad. But the reason why Chris and I are doing this, one, we've known each other for a long time, but you were the first ad hoc in real life meeting that I had since the beginning of 2020.
Really?
Right? Just a reminder, we're in 2022 now.
Yeah.
Right? How mad is that?
I know, yeah, it's bonkers, isn't it?
That isn't right on any level. Yeah, no, I really, really dislike that, but fortunate that we met, because then you're here today.
Indeed.
So I need a couple of things from you. First of all, an introduction to Hospital Records and the movement that you've created, and then we'll ask you about you. So start off with Hospital, please.
Okay. Well, Hospital is now into its 26th year. So we are an independent record label. We're a drum and bass label. We're also a publisher. We are an event promoter. We have a booking agency called Clinic Talent. We're 100% independently owned and operated, based down in Herne Hill, just south of Brixton, in the premises that we moved into in 2018, having previously been in Forest Hill. Staff team, I think, of 36, which does include some freelance staff, but from top to bottom, we like to DIY everything. So, we cover all of the obvious label sides, such as, A&R and delivering new music. We have our digital department, our promo department, our events department, finance and royalties, copyright, legal and business. Our web shop and our D2C business, which is fairly key, which has been sort of running online for the best part of 20 years. And I think that kind of covers, who we are. The label was started by myself and Tony Coleman. We'd worked together since early '93, when I met him as a designer, and we started working together on his acid jazz label called Tongue and Groove. Back in the glory days of acid jazz, which they were, because it was a global movement, which we were a part of just for a couple of years, and but then made a bit of a sea change. 95 took about 6 months to work out what we were going to do next, and what we were going to do next became Hospital. So we are.
Where does the name come from?
Just too many nights down the pub. To be honest, just when we decided that we wanted to do something different. We wanted to do something together. I was basically a DJ with a decent record collection, and Tony convinced me to start making music with him. He's a songwriter, instrumentalist, arranger. Does everything. I do very little. But, back then, 26, 27 years ago, we just thought, well, why not? Let's try and do something together musically. And we were really at that point, 95, being Londoners, we were just really most excited by drum and bass music. Jungle had probably emerged from the 91, 92. And by 95, as you would know, there was that movement of drum and bass artists who were then getting signed to major record label deals, who were breaking out in that sort of initial wave of drum and bass, principally, of course, people like Goldie, like Adam F, Groove Rider, Dillinger, and that musical movement was just the most urgent, exciting thing happening, frankly. So we naively thought we'd try and make some ourselves. And we didn't just make drum and bass, we also made house music, and we made some sort of downbeat music, we made some breaks, and we were just really actually kind of having fun, even though I was slightly alarmed at what my sort of financial prospects were. We were both holding down other jobs. I was a graphic designer. I was basically doing graphic design for good friends in Soho, like Mr. Bongo, The Shop, and Soul Jazz Records, and DJing, and just doing all sorts of odds and sods. And Tony was doing like music for corporate videos and a bit of teaching, yeah. Like so many of us did, when you're trying to establish something for yourselves, you just do whatever it takes. But it was obviously it's a cliche, but it was a special time. It was chaotic, but very sort of innocent and adventurous. And we just made a load of music, and then started to realise that perhaps this could be something. So, of course, and we started to really think about, well, what's it going to be called? What's it going to look like? And, it was literally just, as most people would do, you just, after work, go and sit in a pub and throw around some really rubbish ideas night after night. I actually found the sheet of paper the other day a few years ago when we moved, and there was this long list of different words and names, most of which were so tremendously awful. But in amongst them was hospital. And I just literally sort of put a cross by it. And we, being sort of our backgrounds, I guess, Tony's a bit older than me, but we have a similar love of classic rock music, of black music in all of its forms, but principally he and I sort of growing up listening to like funk and rare groove and soul, a lot of jazz. He's into a lot of classical. We have this broad love of music, but particularly, we made a lot of connections around things like Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple, and fair amount. He's really into prog. Now, can't say I'm really into prog, but so things like some of that, some of those eras of music from the 60s and 70s, which were big on concepts and themes, and like he and I both got that. And I think one thing that we wanted to try and bring to what we were doing was a sense of humour, but also some concepts and some themes and a bit of originality and a bit of uniqueness. And we categorically didn't want, we didn't sound like anyone else in drum and bass, categorically, and that's also why it was a bit of a hard slog in those first few years.
Sure.
But we wanted to, do something different. We wanted to do something that was true to ourselves. And hospitals seemed to resonate with us because as soon as we came up with it, it was just like freestyling ideas, like, we could do a compilation called Plastic Surgery. We could do like a thing called Outpatients. And it just came, and then, and what about the packaging? Well, it was like, well, obviously, the international signal for a hospital is just an H. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not exactly rocket science, and that doesn't make me Neville Brody, but just an H on a sleeve, and let's just do an H on a white sleeve, and let's put stickers on them, but let's do stickers that are actually manufactured by that bloke in Middlesex who only prints stickers on a roll for the Northwest chemists. That's where we got our stickers made.
That's amazing.
And then we bought an Apple Image Writer, one of the single worst dot matrix printers of all time. Which was the only printer that could accommodate the stickers, which were on a roll. When they've got the holes down both sides.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because we're a bit stupid like that, and it would have been so much easier to have just got 1,000 stickers printed from a printer. But we wanted it to be authentic, and those stickers, which are printed fairly badly, because that's how they're printed, and and they're then slowly printed out one by one on this dot matrix printer. But it meant that those early releases that we did for the first couple of years had a real feel. They had a real kind of, I don't know, there seemed like there was some kind of story behind it. Mm-hmm. And those are the details that matter to us. They still matter to us, particularly when we were trying to establish something brand new out of nowhere, try and infiltrate a scene that we really wanted to be part of, that clearly people had no interest in us for a few years. Mm. But we wanted to do it on our own terms. And thankfully, that name and the sort of branding and the visuals and everything about it gradually started to sort of establish itself. And thankfully now we're where we are today, where, I guess maybe sort of people take it for granted. It's very recognisable. Mm-hmm. It translates really well, locally and globally. And, I remember people at the time saying, like, God, why don't you feel a bit annoyed that you chose Hospital? It's a bit of a crap name, isn't it? I was like, mate, it's just genius. You just don't know it yet.
Well, a rose by any name is still a rose, right?
Hopefully.
There you go. That's very good. Thank you so much for that. And listeners, as you can tell, Chris is an incredibly articulate individual and quite a voice in the indie label world. You sit on the board of AIM, is that right?
Not anymore. I have done. I did 2 sentences.
No. Terms.
No, I'm very proud to have done that.
Yeah.
I did a 4 or 5 year stint. Something like, maybe like sort of 2010, and then a bit more recently, I went back on the board for a second time after Paul Pacifico had taken on the role of CEO, and it was good to be part of that, like that new sort of structure and new team. I didn't see out the term, I'm afraid, because I just sort of found the second time around with where Hospital was at, I couldn't really commit. Yeah. So I felt a bit bad about that, but I'm very grateful to AIM for the support and for the opportunities. And the first time I sat on the board, the very first meeting I went to, and as I say, I think it was 2010 roughly, and I went to my first board meeting just thinking I blagged my way through all sorts of things, that.
Well,
and I found myself in this meeting room, and I'm sat next to Simon Raymond from the Cocteau Twins, and Ben Watt from Everything But the Girl. Now, I'm 53. These are 2 of my heroes. Mm-hmm. I grew up as a teenager listening to and buying their records. I went to see Everything But the Girl at Brixton Academy in 1984. And it was lovely. I just kind of had a moment, and I just kind of sat there. I didn't say anything for ages, which is unlike me, as you know. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know. I threw my opinion out into the ring after about an hour about some subject that was being discussed. And Ben Watt just said, "Yeah, I just agree with Chris." And it was,
that's a moment, isn't it? That's a moment right there.
But so, that's one of the beautiful things about the independent community over here, as you and I know, is that it's a fascinating landscape of people. People who have been doing this for 40 years, people who have been doing it for 40 minutes, artists, creative directors, writers, you name it. And just in this bizarre sort of pot of people that are just trying to create great stuff.
Absolutely, yeah, no, and because Nadia Khan has been on the show, so that just sort of demonstrates that sort of, because she's, by her own admittance, sort of fairly new into the industry, compared to some of the folks that you just mentioned, and it is nice that we can accommodate both.
And the great thing about AIM and particularly their board is that the intention is to, I think it's quite easy with those sorts of trade organisations to find maybe a board of directors which is basically the usual suspects, right? The people that have been doing it for 20, 25, 30 years. AIM do really well. People are voted on by the members, but there's always a strong awareness of let's have a broad cross section, because without that you can't properly represent your members, you can't properly represent your community. And I think they're doing, in that respect, I think they're doing a really, really good job about ensuring that people have a voice and there's a genuine cross section of the community being represented.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we won't carry on with AIM too much, but I do know that they are trying to modernise all the time and they're trying to be more inclusive and more accessible. So I think that's really, really positive. But we're going to talk about the exciting topic of COVID because none of us have spoken enough about that for the last 2 years. But it was just the sort of sum total of the conversation that you and I had. And actually, I'm going to use this as a theme for some other interviews that I'm going to do. So thank you very much for the inspiration. So one of the things that I've got a kind of list of different things that we talked about. So we'll just sort of pick them off as we go. And I think for a lot of independently owned businesses, and I guess I always think of that as a company that it lives and sort of dies by its balance sheet rather than getting investment each term because
just basically spending other people's money.
Right, exactly that. And obviously there's a couple of sort of big things that any business, regardless of whether it's in the music industry or not, is things like physical premises, and then we'll talk about staff. So, I mean, the office. So, what's set up? Remind me again. Sorry, you did talk about the office earlier on in the introduction. But where are you now, and what does it look like?
So we're in Herne Hill on a small trading estate just up from the train station. Our sort of journey in this respect was we were back in 95, 96. We were renting premises in West London because we'd taken on a lease from a friend when we were running Tongue and Groove Records. When everything changed and we stopped and we actually established Hospital, we still had a good few years on the lease to see out anyway, and we were renting, and that served us really well. And it was a fantastic, but that was based around a basement recording studio and a modest office space upstairs. But it was really me and Tony, and then amazingly, our first member of staff was a young woman called Emily Moxon, who's now MD at Brownswood, which is fantastic. Yeah. But we grew slowly over those first sort of few years, but we were still renting the space. And it became quite clear to us that we really needed to invest in a property rather than, even back then, and this is 20 years ago, not just 25 years ago, the cost of rent in London to us still seemed crazy. We wanted to be well connected. We were by a tube station. We were by the M4. We had great access to Heathrow, centre of town. But we thought, one part of establishing this business is going to be us making a good decision about premises, and we should invest. So in 2004, we managed to buy our first building, which was in Forest Hill. And we sort of a peculiar kind of spot that had been a day centre for aged concern. So we thought it had the right kind of vibes for two old gits running a label called Hospital. And it was like, it was a really rubbish 80s extension on an old Victorian coach house at the back. So it was ugly. Again, felt right. It had a bit of parking. It was well connected. Wasn't on the tube, and I remember like buying it, and people were like going, "Oh, mate, you're not on the tube. Why aren't you in Shoreditch?" And this is in 2003, 2004.
Yeah, right.
And we were like, "Well, we don't want to be in Shoreditch. It's a rip-off, let alone what it is now."
Yes, horrible.
So we just, we invested in that, and it was the best decision we ever made.
Brilliant.
Because we went in there as 5 people running this label. Part of the building was derelict because we couldn't afford to do it up, and we didn't need the space. We even had space for a table tennis table, for goodness sake, But when we left that building 14 years later, there were 26 of us. And then we moved into, so we bought the premises in Herne Hill, which is, a more substantial investment, and it's actually more of like a standard industrial unit, but it serves our purposes really well. So, ground floor is warehouse, our studio, meeting room, eating area, and then upstairs was a big open plan office space, but we've now built in another meeting room and a dedicated sort of streaming room for our DJs and, musical content off the back of COVID. And that's been, it's just when we've been going through, all of us have been going through these extremely challenging times, as a company, knowing that you have an asset like that is just a real leveler, to know that, okay, we've still got the building, we're paying off the mortgage, but that's been a key factor of the way that the business has grown in these last 20 years, is like rather than renting. Because especially now, like to try and rent a space for the amount of people that we have would be crazy money. Even Zone 4, let alone up here in the very fashionable environs of Haggerston and Hackney, everywhere else. The impact of COVID obviously threw everything up in the air because suddenly we're not there. And then,
so when did you buy that building?
we bought it in summer 2018. And we were barely in there for about a year.
So I was going to say,
year
you
and a half.
just about got it renovated, set up as you wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were really sort of getting our teeth into it. And then COVID hit. And so, of course, I was going to say it was empty. But what was amazing is that David Lopez, who's our Catalan web shop operations manager, he lives down the road. And he and one member of staff were going in 5 days a week to just do all the web shop orders day in, day out, get the deliveries. And, God love him, it's like things like that are just such a blessing. We also ensured that it was just the two of them. There was no one else there, so that they felt safe and comfortable. And they just kept the lights on in that respect. Yeah. To get to where we are now, last summer, 21, we did, as I say, we built a couple of rooms upstairs. And we surveyed the staff. We sort of said, look, what do you want to do? And I recognise that for me personally, I've worked for myself my whole life, but I've always been in creative buildings, office spaces, 5 days a week, 7 days a week, doing ridiculous hours or whatever. But I've always loved that. I've loved the experience of just working with people that motivate you, that inspire you, that, in a highly creative situation. I'd like to think we've managed to take that with us as a company as we've grown. So to then suddenly work from home for the first time in my life, work at a kitchen table, and then initially, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. Like many people, I think I then started to realise that of course there are some benefits.
Sure.
So we surveyed the staff last summer and said, look, we're looking to, we've done some work. We're going to open up the building again. What would you be looking for? How would you like to come back to work? And it was a fairly even split between some of the staff saying, I really want to come back. Some of the staff saying, well, I'm quite happy where I am. And so really, we've been operating a flexible hours policy ever since, which, of course, hopefully is reflective of the wishes of the staff team. But nonetheless, I'd like to think overseen and sort of steered by the directors. That is still evolving, but as a result, so we now have, I might go in on a Monday and there's 4 people in there, and I might go in on a Wednesday and there's 18.
Yeah.
And that's all right. I, just being totally honest, I still find it a bit of a challenge. I find it a bit odd going into the office and thinking it's like a ghost town.
Yeah, sure.
But naturally, all that matters is that people get the job done. The flip side of it for me, though...
And that they feel like they can get their job done.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, now we're in February 22, and obviously, we're all hoping for... We're hoping for a clear 12 months of... I wasn't going to say freedom, like I'm not Mel Gibson, but an ability for all of us to do our jobs and to socialise and to live our lives, obviously. We're all hoping for that. And I think as a business, like many others, we're hoping for that flexibility and that opportunity. One thing that I do feel is that, we're fortunate to have recruited a number of staff in the last
You read my mind. This is where I was going to go. New starters. Yeah, let's talk about those. How have you handled that?
We now have a fantastic HR partner called Emily. I had a meeting with Wes at Defector yesterday. He's a good friend, and we were talking about HR, and we only managed to recruit Emily December 2020, and and he said, yeah, we're just trying to get an HR partner ourselves, and he said, so what, have you always done it yourselves? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, same as us. And you kind of laugh about it because now I can't, reflecting now after bringing Emily in, I can't believe that we used to think that we could just handle this ourselves.
Honestly, you and everybody else.
But it's, and I think generally it's because we would like to think, you and I and our friends and colleagues in the industry would like to think we're good people. We are we're sensible, we're supportive, etc., etc. But let's be honest, we are not HR specialists. I did not get into this business to be an HR specialist or an office manager. There was plenty of things I didn't really think I'd be doing. That's definitely not one of them. So she has offered us some genuine support and structure, which I'm very grateful for. The recruiting process has been, it's actually just been improved, thanks to her. I think the key, though, of course, is that in bringing new people on board, you're doing it when you're working from home or you're doing flexible hours, and that's the challenge. So the biggest challenge is how do we actively sort of nurture and support those, particularly the young careers, but we've hired more senior people as well. But I think particularly the more junior staff who are coming in sometimes for their first job in the industry, and they're working in their bedroom, and they're on Zoom, and they're on Slack, and they're on email, and they barely know anyone. Now that's a real challenge, which is not helped by flexible hours, which is not helped by working from home. So thankfully, of course, now that the office is open pretty much and, restrictions are pretty much gone for now, there's more of an ability to encourage those young staff into the office, but not on their own. There's no point them sitting there on their own without anyone else. So, I think we're learning how to navigate that and how to encourage, managers with younger staff to be, to arrange things collectively. But outside of that, we now do we do a monthly, it's called Lunch and Learn. We had one, I think it was actually this Monday, I was actually at the office, but brought someone in for a lunchtime talk. We buy a load of pizzas, we encourage all the staff to come in, and we had someone come in who was talking about how to budget your own finances, how to plan, how to save, etc., which frankly is relevant to all of us, right? And so give them an hour talk, 30 minutes, questions and chat, food, pizza, hang out, and then you can get back to work in the afternoon. So we're doing that once a month. We're also trying to now do a bit more of a social, look, let's actually see each other. And yes, we can go to the pub, or maybe we could go bowling, maybe we could just go to the park, and let's just actually hang out and remember who we are. And of course, we have our events, as you know, and there's lots of shows going on. But then at the same time, I don't just expect the staff to go, because it's a bit of a busman's holiday, really. Yeah. Some of them love going and want guest lists, and some of them it's the last thing they want to do, Sure. But so we're learning all the time how to improve that onboarding, let's call it. And crucially, not just the onboarding process, but that first 3 to 6 month period for those staff members.
It's like a nurturing process.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard, and it does. That's a work in progress, because first and foremost, we will only find out from talking to them as we go, from not just monitoring what they're doing, but spending time with them, trying to also encourage whoever's got responsibility for line managing them, or and so that's brought a whole new edge to edge is the wrong word, but a whole new aspect to the staff team, which I appreciate. That there's a lot of, you and I know, there's lots and lots of articles and chat about the positive aspects of remote working and how great that is on so many levels, but it's not as simple as that.
No.
And I think personally, on behalf of the hospital, I would like us to try and find a middle ground. I'm not up for just remote working and that's that, because it's nice and easy. You can work in your pants. You don't have to commute, blah, blah, blah. And you can do everything on Zoom. I'm sick and tired of Zoom.
Oh, I don't know how you feel, but it's changed the makeup of your day. And the idea of having a meeting with somebody is very different to how it used to be, because people will just find gaps in your calendar, and you can end up an entire day not even having a bathroom break. yeah, sure. And also the thing is that when you're doing meetings on Zoom, someone's internet breaks, something's buffering. Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry. Can you?
Exactly.
Can you?
But also, I think the most important thing is that, frankly, we are in danger of simply losing our social skills.
I agree.
Because we lack the body language that you and I have right now. Yeah. and just the simple human aspects of spending time together, even if it's 30 minutes, even if it's an hour. So we need to continue to discuss at my company how we are going to direct this and how we're going to steer that staff team. Of course, one of the ironies now, if I'm honest, is that I also have some young staff going, "Oh, I need to work from home." You've been with us for like a year,
Yeah.
and actually, it was only 10 minutes ago when you were in this building 5 days a week, going down the pub on a Friday with half the staff. But all of a sudden now, like, you couldn't possibly come to the office. And I'm being a bit flippant, but it's incredible to me how quickly all of this seems to suddenly turn on its head, and how it somehow there's almost this sort of undercurrent, as though those of us that run companies, own companies, have responsibilities for staff, suddenly need to say, "Oh yes, but of course I couldn't possibly ask you to come to the office 5 days a week. I mean, that would be outrageous." I mean, it's not. It's not outrageous at all. But we have a duty of care, but we also simply need to be objective about what we believe the company and the team needs. And someone that is maybe taking care of copyrights and royalty accounting has an entirely different working day to the guys in the warehouse or some of the staff who are working on the studio sessions. And, so it's just a massive challenge that we never saw coming. But I think so long as we don't fear it, and just as long as we're willing to talk about it, I'm sure we'll be fine.
Do you think it's changed forever? Do you think there's any way back?
I think it's changed forever.
Yeah.
And I guess the only thing that I would say is, like, it has changed forever. I'm not part of that sort of happy clappy crowd of like, oh, and everything's brilliant. Yeah.
No, it presents so many challenges. Yeah, no, absolutely. Right, okay, so that's staff and office. Good. Business. Let's get down to business, shall we? So you've got a company that spans multiple different disciplines. So,
yeah.
So we've got live, we've got merch, we've got fan club, we've got records, all sorts of stuff. Talk me through how you've seen the sort of your business change in terms of its revenue, in terms of its focus, in terms of its viability, all of those sorts of things.
The most obvious, initial switch, was when we started, we were in a more traditional landscape. We came from the slightly more old-fashioned world of records, vinyl, and a big Monday ship out. There was like that day of, there was that culture of, so what's your Monday ship out looking like? We've done 15,000, blah, 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 blah. So, of course, when this industry got completely turned upside down by the internet, and initially by a la carte downloading, and then I was saying to someone the other day, I remember having my first ever meeting with a dude from, it wasn't him, but a bloke from Sweden who wanted to talk to me about something called Spotify. And me and Tony sat in our local pub going, and what? And it does what? And sorry, what do you pay? You pay basically nothing. So that is the single most dramatic about face, of course, is the internet and the shift from physical products. Let alone when I started. I mean, my goodness, I remember we had CDs that that had been out for a year that was in HMV for 23 quid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's insane. But that many record labels in the 90s, in many respects, sort of built their business off, and it's no one's fault. It's just that was the nature of the industry at that time. The markup on that is quite staggering. I can't say that I sold many at 23 quid. I sold them at a tenner. But, so when you go from that to where we are now, that has fundamentally changed absolutely everything. And, we went through the initial panic of, Pirate Bay and Napster, and, and everyone thought our businesses were going to collapse. And then we saw that actually iTunes was selling loads of downloads and loads of MP3s, and then we got into FLAC and WAV and blah blah blah, and then this thing called streaming came along, and we were like, oh wow, oh god, really?
Yeah.
That sounds like a disaster, And so we're now at a point where we do physical products, and it's a modest part of the music sales. Mm-hmm. Having said that, of course, for a company with a big catalogue, streaming is brilliant if you get it right, and if you know how to work it, and if you actually do own your catalogue, and if you have respect for that, and you do it properly with the artists, etc., etc.
I think Spotify is saying 60% of music consumed is catalogue, as in over 3 years old.
Absolutely, and it's something that is on my mind is that we have a big A&R team. We have an A&R team of 8 people, which is essentially sort of overseen by myself and Dan Newton, but very vibrant mix of men and women, different ages, different experiences, who drive the artist projects and the things that we do. Realistically, we probably need to think about having a catalogue A&R manager. Because after 26 years, it's actually, there is more and more that can be done with that. So, but
it's a specialist skill.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you look at labels like, whether it's Beggars or Cherry Red is a great example of a fantastic catalogue label, which is really their modus operandi. We should be thinking in those terms when we think about, 30 years' time, 35 years' time, because I want that catalogue to be active and vibrant. But yeah, so that, that is fundamentally the biggest shift. And I'm proud of how we've managed to roll with that, because we were the first drum and bass label on iTunes. We were digitising our catalogue when no one really knew what, and I'm reflecting the drum and bass scene, but when people didn't have any idea what that meant, we got to understand what metadata, ISRC codes. And it's not exciting, it's not sexy, but it's essential.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you get it wrong or you ignore it, funnily enough, you don't get paid.
Yeah.
In the same way that we invested our efforts and time and money in publishing. We started off with an admin deal. Our publishing is completely in-house, and the publishing company is a huge part of the day-to-day and the bottom line on the, on the balance sheet. So it's kind of, there have been some seismic shifts. Of course, as you know, for us as a company, live is huge, but then of the last 18 months, which have been pretty horrific, and of course unforeseen by all of us, like many of our friends, we took some big hits. But we obviously were not alone in that, and there were some people that suffered really badly. Not just the promoters, of course, but also the artists and the staff and the venues and the licensing, all that kind of thing. So I think one thing that we've learned is just that we have to continually reassess the balance sheet and the financial analysis of what we're doing. We do it on a quarterly basis. We have a much longer annual meeting, where you just go through it, and you literally look at, Craig does some very nice pie charts in colour, thankfully. But
otherwise, how would you know what they mean?
But to kind of go, oh, okay, so because I thought, maybe I thought merch was doing this, but in fact it's doing that.
Right.
And there are times when you realise that certain departments are smashing it, and you act accordingly. Other departments are maybe struggling, and you need to support them. Or maybe you need to accept that certain activities just maybe, I don't know, maybe you just can't keep doing them in the way that you used to. But so it's really it's that combination of music sales in streaming and any way that we monetize our music and our catalogue. It's live tickets, shows, festivals, it's publishing. And then it's the bonuses of the D2C business, the sync, and just trying to keep all of those plates spinning.
Have you had to make, where you've seen a drop-off in your live activities, have you had to make too many adjustments in terms of things like staffing?
We were very lucky that, spring of 2020, when all of us were just reeling and trying to even understand what the implications of this pandemic were going to be. I think we initially furloughed 4 staff. We then brought 2 back within 4 weeks. and then we had to keep 2 on furlough for a few months, and then we actually managed to repurpose them in different areas of the company.
Oh, great.
And that was 2 of the young women who were working on the booking agency, but because the booking agency just had nothing, literally had nothing. Yeah. But we're very fortunate that Chris Marigold, who is one of the directors of and really drives the booking agency, he wasn't panicked by it. He just diligently got his head down. He was busy. It's just that he was busy cancelling shows and postponing shows and cancelling shows and postponing shows. But we managed to bring those 2 staff back into label activity, and then in fact, in the end, we only lost 1 member of staff, but then we brought him back 6 months later.
Right.
And we were lucky because he was still keen. He's still, he's a great young guy, very smart when it comes to events and logistics, and he understood because, of course, there was nothing there. But then we said, you know what? It looks like it's coming back online. Come back on a temporary contract, and he did, and then we managed to make that secure again. And so I'm very relieved that the events department and the agency have just managed to just ride the storm,
so you
get through it.
So you mentioned you have a live streaming studio in the office. Did you just start doing a lot more online to sort of try and balance that?
Yeah, I mean, like many of our friends and colleagues, in dance music, the instinctive shift was, okay, let's do DJ sets from home. Let's do DJ sets from bedrooms, from studios, from warehouses, whatever it might be. Because we needed, the artists needed to feel connected. We had a huge gap in our schedule where we would be doing shows, and we were doing a variety of things. We did a fundraiser for the NHS, like an all-day set of DJ sets. We did a lot of pre-recorded stuff. We did live stuff, but it was generally based around DJs and vocalists and MCs, and just trying to give people content to get their teeth into. As I think I might have said to you before, quite quickly that just became untenable because realistically, those streams which were going on YouTube, of course, for free, which, like many other people in my world, people were saying, "But what do we do? Do we charge? Do we?
Yeah.
How do you charge for that kind of content?"
You crucially said that you did that first one for charity, and I think Beatport did their big Reconnect thing, that global kind of, and that was all for charity, and they raised a lot of money. But you're right, there was then this moment afterwards where people were like, well, if this is the new normal, this can't carry on like this, can it? We've got to figure this out properly.
Absolutely. And in realistically, as hospitality, as an event, as a recognised event, we can't really expect our fans to just willingly just look at DJs in their socks in their bedrooms. As as rootsy and real as that is, it's not particularly exciting. So then, of course, the logical step is that, as we did, you then go and you go and hire a venue like Studio 338, and you get a whole bunch of people down there, and a multi-camera production, which costs quite a lot of money for content that you put online for free. But there's obviously, there's positive reasons why you're doing it, but it's not going to last. And so the idea of building a dedicated space within the building went hand in hand with us starting our subscription service, which is called Hospital Hub.
What's that about?
Which is really, I guess it's a bit like a members club. So for £4 a month, you get exclusive content, you get priority access. There are limited edition bits and pieces, whether that might be a particular piece of merch or first access to tickets or a hub members area at our Woods Festival. We only launched that in September last year. We ridiculously launched it the same weekend as we launched our first ever 2-day outdoor festival. So I'm very grateful to the staff for not literally losing their minds. Like anything, it was just running a bit late, with the coding and with the structure for it. But, it's a bit like, in a way, I suppose I kind of liken it to
sort of Patreon and...
Well, I suppose being a bit old-fashioned, my feeling is it's a bit like, getting your members club for the Velvet Rooms or Herbal back in the day when.
Herbal.
Are you a member?
Oh my God, yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh yeah, I'm a member. So you either get in for free before 11, or you get half price, and actually you get the first shot at. And it's the sort of the logic behind that of saying, look, you are essentially the core hospital fan base, and so we want to offer you things first. We want to offer you things that other people can't get. I'll be honest, we're learning as we go. It's only 4 or 5 months in, but we're keen to nurture and cultivate that members club feel. Not because we want it to feel exclusive, but just because you want to really, if you like, prioritise and reward those fans that really have probably been there for years and years, who are always first to buy tickets. They're the ones down the front. They're the ones that are always pre-ordering the box sets, and the ones that have really helped us establish what we do, and find unique and special content.
I was going to say, 'cause that takes quite a lot of effort, doesn't it?
It does, of course, it does. And so it's quite a project that I'm confident will evolve and establish itself during the next 6, 9, 12 months of this year. But I think a lot of it maybe is almost like a bit of a mindset. It's like, well, do you want to be a hub member? Do you want to be part of that gang?
Yeah.
And I can remember when I was a teenager, and it's like having your favourite band, and you do sign up to their fan club or whatever it is, because you just love it. And I think if we can deliver it correctly, and steer it in the right way, then I'd like to think that the hub will be a new lane in which we can operate and deliver content that we can also ideally get to a stage where there will be some aspects of that are purely for the members only, but others that can be shared piecemeal or for a certain amount of time, or just for a one-off day thing, or whatever it might be, that can complement the core activities of the shows, the festivals, the clubs, the music, the merch. Because the idea is that, realistically, we developed that because we thought, well, look, if we never get out of this pandemic, or if there's another one, God forbid, in 10 years' time, we need to be better prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, well, absolutely. Then it gives you a new channel to work to. You mentioned artists earlier and some of the difficulties that they've had. How have you guys been able to support them through this?
I mean, it's been a massive learning curve, because particularly if you work in dance music, we are proudly an underground dance music company. That is our world. When the live sector just simply shut the doors and closed for months on end, we suddenly had artists who were used to being on the road 2 to 3 to 4 times every week, and not just in the UK, like internationally. And so suddenly all of those earnings were just wiped off their own monthly, weekly schedule.
It's often talked about that live piece of an artist's career is often where most of their revenue comes from.
For sure. Yeah. And, I'm sure that's true for the traditional kind of like, rock bands and bands that are on tour. But, the thing is, for a DJ, we have artists, without being crude, but, we have artists who will get paid 500 quid for an hour. We have artists who get paid $5,000 for an hour. And if you're doing that 2 to 3 to 4 times a week, and it's just gone, that's devastating, because some of these artists are quite young, but some of them are in their 30s and 40s with mortgages and families. We had artists, who just picked up day jobs, who started driving Amazon vans.
Oh God!
Fair play to them.
I admire that. That's where you can just take the ego out of it. And but that's tough. And we had others who were, of course, struggling. Well, they were struggling with their mental health. They were struggling with their financial health and everything that goes with that. We set up a hardship fund for actually artists and staff, which it took us a while to piece it together because of
the company was needing to.
I was going to say, as a business owner, you're thinking,
Yeah,
how are we going to survive?
You're trying to, reassess your own finances, and we had many, sort of challenging finance meetings. I never thought that we were genuinely at risk, but of course, I was very concerned about the staff team and the artist. I was concerned about the losses in the live sector, the impact that would have on the staff team and everything like that. So we were we were of course trying to manage our own revenue streams, but very, very conscious of the impact on the artists. And so it took us quite a few months to put it together, but we were able to establish a hardship fund just to say to artists or staff, look, if you are in trouble and if you think you need something, there's only so much that we can offer, but we can offer some money off the bat just to keep you sorted in your rent or whatever it might be for the next sort of 3 or 4 months. And we'll assess that as we go. I'm proud to say that I think there's only 1 or 2 artists that actually needed support, but in fact it was quite clear that it was there to be used. But I respect the fact that a lot of them were saying, I appreciate it, I think I'm all right, thank you. And thank goodness, of course, things sporadically came back, then they stopped and then they came back, and now we're in a much better place where thankfully after July, August of last year, we find ourselves in this space. I mean, November, December obviously was a bit of a wobble, and we were very, very lucky that we had a New Year's Eve show at Drumsheds for 10,000 people, which was amazing. That had 10,000 people in it.
Yeah, that's incredible. I heard it was very busy.
Yeah, and of course, but I'll be honest, I was having meetings on the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, where, of course, people were saying, I think we're going to have to pull it. Mm-hmm. Let's wait. Let's just sit tight. Let's sit tight. Let's get to Boxing Day. And then, I think it was the 27th when, like so many people, you keep an eye on news reports, and I rang Craig, our finance director, said, did Javid just say that we're all right? And there was this, we were very fortunate that we'd actually sold most of the tickets, but, so we just had a sudden burst of activity. And for a show like that, you need about a couple of days to actually prep and actually piece it all together. But we feel very blessed in that respect. And I'm just hoping that now it's, beginning of February. Don't want to jinx it, but maybe we'll be all right this year.
It does feel like it. It does feel like.
But of course, at the same time, you look at New Zealand and.
Well, I was speaking to a friend of mine in Singapore, and he mostly works in China, and the conditions there for travel are very, very different to what we have.
Sure.
Yeah.
And and of course, I'm not quite sure what the situation is in North America, and I think selfishly, for a company like us, the UK is our core market. Mm-hmm. But then our second market is the States. Our third market is New Zealand. But of course we have to be grateful for what we're able to do. So we focus on London and the UK. We do have shows in Europe lined up, in fact, this quarter and next quarter. And so we're obviously very hopeful we can now get back to doing some of those shows. Yeah. And crucially, that this will be hopefully the first time in 3 years we can actually deliver our summer beach festival, which this year is going to be in Albania in early June. And I really need that to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
To be honest, after 2 years of cancelling it, which was pretty rough. So it'd be great if we can get out there.
Wonderful. We're close on coming up for time, but I do want to just ask you about how marketing has changed for releases on the label. You lose so much about being able to do a show to promote a record, whether it's to get the editors from a DSP down just to kind of introduce something new, or whatever it might be, a sort of playback type thing. All of that's kind of changed. So how have you found sort of marketing of the company evolve, and what do you think you'll keep going into a changed world, or what worked, what didn't work?
I guess the most obvious answer is that marketing just runs through social media. It's not really a good thing, but there it is. That also means that marketing has to be delivered in, bite-sized chunks for people that have as much as 6 or 7 seconds.
Oh, if that.
To indulge themselves in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, the battle has been on Facebook. It's primarily, I think I would be right in saying that really everything is sort of focused around Instagram and TikTok and, Twitter and Facebook. I mean, there is still, we're fortunate that we have quite a broad crowd in terms of its demographic. Drum and bass is blessed with lots of young energy that comes in waves, almost like you can set your clock by it. Kids get to sort of 16 and they start playing drum and bass, going out to drum and bass, and by the time they're 18 they're going raving, and then by the time they're 22, sadly some of them just go and listen to Coldplay. But we're fortunate that we also have a dedicated crowd in the 30s and 40s and 50s. Like people that have been with us since day one, people that have always had a deep-rooted passion for it. Now, of course, you and I know that. So that means that some of them may be more attuned to Facebook feeds. Others that, like my daughters, and I'm lucky to get a lot of feedback from them about just their sort of habits and their consumption habits.
What sort of age are they?
21 and 17.
Okay, all right.
And, so really for them, I mean, it's only Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok.
Right.
That's all that can.
How many dances have you done, Chris?
I mean, I do try and avoid those. I get thrown into things from time to time, but let's not go there. So yeah, let's be honest. Marketing is really based around those platforms, but then how anyone can be smart and creative and imaginative with the content that you put up there, and that's continually evolving. There's a lot of lazy memes that just, oh, geez, I mean, come on. Like, that's not yours. The fact that you just posted it doesn't make you funny. But, look, I'll be honest. This is why we employ smart young people. I just leave them to it.
Sure.
I will tell them the things that I don't like or the things that I don't want to see, or the things that I just think are a bit too corny or a bit too cheesy. I think it's as much down to artists to have a voice, have a personality. Now in drum and bass, that's a challenge.
I think in
dance music.
I think in a lot of genres actually that's quite challenging because they're first and foremost a recording artist, a performing artist, a songwriter, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they can do things that are quote unquote engaging on social media.
Yeah, like we have an act called Kings of the Rollers, which is Serum Voltage and Blade Runner, 3 established solo producers, alongside Injo, who is most often their host and vocalist. And it's just a bit like stand-up comedy. Now I love that,
right?
Because they do have personalities. Blade Runner, bless him, is quite quiet. Love you, Dev. But Serum and Voltage could easily just have their own TV series, as could Inja. And now that's always been a kind of a real feature of their just their profile.
Yeah.
And that's a real blessing to a record label, of course. But I can't also only sign artists on the basis that they could do 10-minute open mic stand-up. So it's and the thing is like I'd like to think that Tony and I have always, when it's come to the artists that we've been motivated by, that we've been really inspired by, that we've wanted to work with, we do believe they have a voice, they have a musical voice, right? That's essential, because that's obviously where it starts and finishes. That's where it lives and breathes, is what is the music like? But beyond that, you then do sort of say, well, we've always said we need to get to meet people. We need to get to know people first, because understanding their character and their personality is a key part of how we work with them. Now, we've always said that from the old days before social media. We would always say that because that was an honest perspective of, if I'm going to invest my team and money behind this artist, I genuinely want to go and hang out in the pub with them.
Yeah.
If I don't get on with them, or I just find them really annoying, let's just not work with them in the first place, because why bother? Life's too short. But now in the landscape that we're in, that level of sort of character and personality is fairly important. And I think, for instance, we have an artist called Logistics, who's one of our most successful artists ever. He's a cornerstone of the company. We just put out his brand new EP. You should listen to it. It's called Love Letters. Thanks very much. Now, Matt is actually very unassuming. He's not shy, but, all he wants to do is make music. He's always been like that. But he has a catalogue that speaks for itself. Man is like 7 albums in, But then if he was a brand new artist coming to me, I'd be probably needing to spend a bit more time with him with the promo team and the marketing team, saying, we're going to need to sort of come up with some plans and some strategies. And he'd probably go, oh, God, really?
Yeah.
Well,
or it just becomes such a distraction that it starts to negatively impact his output as a musician.
But then we also have like a new signing, Winslow. His name is Duncan. He's from St. Louis in Missouri. One of our first North American signings, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. Late 20-something, young black guy from Missouri, has never left America, has only been a couple of places in America. He teaches viola at the college orchestra.
Right, wow. And
he's very unassuming, but actually very funny, lovely, cuddly personality, who has his own YouTube channel where he uploads, they don't get massive views, but, he'll upload a YouTube video where he's like talking about how to mix down, your drum track, or he'll just talk about his love of Calibre, or he'll just talk about things that really annoy him when it comes to DJing, and it, again, in a very different way, in a very unassuming way, but he also has this kind of character, which is a real blessing. And his music's very deep, and his music, he doesn't make big anthems for the stadiums or anything like that, but I love the music, I love the character, I love him as a person. Or you've got Bop from St. Petersburg in Russia, who I believe categorically is a genius, who makes ambient music, techno, drum and bass, you name it, and is musically one of the most fascinating people I've ever met. And I love working with him. He's not an easy sell, but some of the music that he's brought to the catalogue is just outstanding. It's so special. So it's our job is to keep understanding who these people are, how we can really sort of tell their story with them. You can't impose it on them. You can't tell them what to do. And if they are a bit quiet,
because if you force it too much, it's not sustainable. And this concept of engagement is an ongoing process. It's not just that one witty.
Also, it's not real.
Yeah, right.
And we're not doing pop music where you mug people off with some nonsense. It's like we want to nurture these careers and celebrate these careers and get to understand who these people are, know what their ambitions are. Also say to them, look, tell us what you don't want to do. Like, you don't have to be that funny guy on Instagram. You don't have to. You could, but let's tell your story. Let's try and make it real for you. But we are invested in, you said it yourself, storytelling, and it's storytelling for artists. It's storytelling for musicians and for the record label. And I do categorically see that these days, the artists that really resonate are ones that fans can really invest in all sorts of different ways. And there isn't one set way of doing it. But it does mean that promo and marketing is a real art form, and it's something that we continue to learn like everyone else. And we're grateful for just smart, talented young people in our marketing department to drive that, with their own ideas, willing to make mistakes, and also if they invest themselves in the artists, then we will gradually build the kind of results that we're looking for, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate all the time that you've given to
Pleasure.
this. It's been absolutely fascinating. And again, thank you for giving me the inspiration for what will be a series of a few episodes. So we'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
So to my listeners, thank you for listening. As ever, I welcome all feedback, comments and suggestions for future shows. My Twitter and Instagram handle is @AlexBranson, or head to the website where you'll find a contact page. Also a shout out to the incredible audio assassins who provide the music branding for the show, and if you like the show, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.